There is a predator that stalks men not in the alleyways at night, not in the shadows of crime, and not even through the screens of explicit temptation. No, this predator is far more cunning, far more silent, and infinitely more destructive. It does not chase its prey with claws or teeth, but with comfort. It does not strike with sudden violence, but with slow erosion and the cruelest part. Most men invite it in for years. People have pointed fingers at porn as the great corrupter of men's minds. They say it strips away drive, masculinity, intimacy, and ambition. And while there is truth in that, porn is only a surface-level poison. It is the obvious symptom, not the root disease. What truly destroys men faster, more efficiently, and far more invisibly than porn is something most never even considered dangerous. The endless cycle of cheap dopamine. The small rewards that require no struggle, no risk, and no courage. Imagine a man at the end of his day. He sinks into a chair, pulls out his phone, and scrolls 100 jokes, 1,000 clips, endless faces he'll never meet in that moment. The world is reduced to little jolts of chemical pleasure, nothing earned, nothing fought for, nothing real, just a stream of artificial sparks in the brain that fade as quickly as they appear. He tells himself he's resting, that he deserves this, but beneath the illusion of relaxation, something darker is happening. His willpower is quietly bleeding out, his ambitions are shrinking. His hunger for life is being replaced by hunger for another hit of digital satisfaction. This is the predator, not porn, but the system of normalized distractions that disguise themselves as harmless entertainment, the constant, shallow rewards that keep men sedated, because, while porn at least carries with it a stigma, whisper of guilt, scrolling endlessly, gaming for hours, binge-watching meaningless shows, consuming without creating, all of this is seen as normal. Nobody questions it, nobody warns against it, and that is exactly why it is so dangerous. Predator doesn't want you to notice, it wants you to think you're safe. It wants you to believe that this is just life in the modern world, that there's nothing sinister in spending hours locked into screens. But if you zoom out, if you look closely, you begin to see the pattern. The man who once dreamed of building something, of proving something, of conquering challenges, becomes the man who is content with digital trophies, likes, and fleeting distractions. He feels busy, stimulated, engaged, but in truth, he is paralyzed. This destruction is subtle. It doesn't announce itself with a dramatic collapse. It whispers, it eats away, piece by piece. Today you waste 20 minutes, tomorrow, an hour, next week, an entire evening, then years, and before you know it, the predator has taken not your body, but your spirit. It hasn't killed you. It has convinced you to live like you are already dead. The terrifying part is not that men fall into this trap. The terrifying part is how willingly they choose it. The modern world has perfected the art of engineering addiction. Infinite scrolls, endless feeds, algorithmic hooks, each designed not to entertain you, but to enslave you, to make you consume without ever being satisfied, to keep you engaged without ever being fulfilled. And men, thinking they are in control, willingly see, the predator does not need to chase you anymore. It does not need to attack you in the wild. You bring it into your home, you feed it your attention. You allow it to rewire your brain. This is what makes it far deadlier than porn. Porn, at least, is obvious. It shouts its corruption, but this hides beneath the skin of normality. It looks harmless, it feels harmless, and yet, it is silently destroying the very things that make a man alive: his drive, his purpose, his hunger for meaning. If you doubt this, look around, ask yourself, why so many young men feel aimless? Why ambition has decayed? Why depression spreads? Why discipline is dying? It is not because they are inherently weak. It is because the predator has grown too strong, too invisible. It has learned to package weakness as pleasure, laziness as freedom, distraction as connection. This is the true threat, not one website, not one habit, but an entire system built on making men surrender their strength for comfort. And every time a man scrolls instead of striving, every time he consumes instead of creating, Every time he seeks easy dopamine instead of real challenge, the predator grows stronger. The question is no longer whether porn is dangerous. The question is whether men even realize that something far worse is already inside them, hollowing them out from the inside. This hidden predator is not after your body, it is after your spirit, and unless you see it for what it is, unless you fight back, it will claim you without you ever knowing you've been hunted. The human brain was not designed for this world. For hundreds of thousands of years, men lived in scarcity. Every reward was tied to effort. Every moment of joy earned through struggle to eat. You had to hunt to win respect. You had to prove your strength to survive. You had to endure. The brain evolved under these conditions, building circuits that rewarded discipline, focus, and patience. But today, that same brain is under siege. It has been hijacked, rewired, and manipulated not by nature, but by design. The predator we uncovered earlier thrives because it has discovered how to exploit the very system that once made men strong. The dopamine reward mechanism. Dopamine is not pleasure itself, it is the signal of anticipation. The spark that drives us to chase, to build, to conquer. When a hunter saw signs of prey, his dopamine surged, fueling his pursuit. When a craftsman worked long hours toward mastery, dopamine whispered that the effort was worth it. When a man endured pain to achieve greatness, dopamine carried him through. In the natural world, dopamine was the lifeblood of ambition, but in the modern world, dopamine has been weaponized, no longer tied to effort, no longer linked to survival. It is now delivered in cheap, artificial doses. Likes, notifications, quick wins, shallow stimulation instead of fueling pursuit. It fuels paralysis instead of driving men forward. It locks them in loop. Psychologists call this the variable reward system. First uncovered in the experiments of B.F. Skinner. Place a rat in a box with a lever. Sometimes the lever dispenses food, sometimes it doesn't. The uncertainty keeps the rat pressing endlessly, addicted to the possibility of a reward. This is the same principle behind slot machines, gambling, and now social media feeds. Every swipe, every scroll, every click is a lever pulled in hope of something novel, something rewarding, something to light up the brain. The tragedy is that the rat doesn't know it's trapped, and neither do most men. They believe they're in control, when in reality, they're pressing the lever over and over, while their life quietly slips away. Dependency begins here. The brain, once built for challenge, is reconditioned for ease. Dopamine, once the engine of discipline, becomes the drug of distraction. The man tells himself he will cut back tomorrow. He tells himself he deserves just a little more time. But his circuitry has already been hijacked. His willpower is eroding, his resistance crumbling. Like any addict, he begins to rationalize his chains, and unlike substances that clearly destroy health, alcohol, drugs, even porn, these small dopamine hits disguise themselves as harmless. Nobody warns you against watching another video. Nobody scolds you for checking your phone. Society applauds these habits, normalizes them, integrates them into daily life. Yet, they strip away the same thing porn does: your capacity to focus, to delay gratification, to pursue something greater than the immediate moment. Neuroscience now shows that constant overstimulation doesn't just feel addictive, actually lowers your baseline dopamine levels. The more you consume quick hits, the less satisfied you feel with reality. The more stimulation you flood your brain with, the more numb you become soon. Even simple pleasures, reading a book, working on a craft, engaging in real relationships, feel dull compared to the instant rush of artificial dopamine. And so you return again and again, not because it makes you happy, but because reality now feels unbearable without it. This is why dependency forms not from pleasure, but from the loss of pleasure, not from happiness, but from the inability to feel happy without the hit. The man becomes like a shadow of himself, no longer chasing real goals, but chasing the chemicals his own brain refuses to release naturally. And this dependency has consequences far beyond wasted time. It rewires ambition. A man who once dreamed of building something meaningful now finds it exhausting. A man who once felt hunger for challenge now feels anxious at the thought of effort. A man who once chased women, status, or mastery now chases pixels, likes, and shallow distractions. His willpower, once his greatest weapon, has been traded for the numbness of convenience. The scariest part is how invisible it all feels. Ask any man if he's addicted to his phone, to scrolling, to validation, and most will laugh it off. They believe they're in control, but the truth is written in their habits. Their wasted hours, their fading fire, and the system is designed to keep it that way, to keep men believing they're choosing, while in reality, their choices have already been shaped by forces they cannot see. Dependency is not just a chemical state, it is a psychological prison. The door is wide open, but the prisoner never leaves. He doesn't even notice he's locked in. And this is why it destroys men faster than porn. Porn is obvious, it shouts its corruption, it triggers guilt, but this dependency, it whispers, it looks like relaxation, like connection, like normal life. It hides behind the disguise of harmless entertainment while it robs men of their drive, their ambition, and their ability to struggle. The psychology of dependency explains why so many men feel restless yet numb, busy yet unproductive, connected yet deeply alone. It is not weakness that has trapped them, it is a system built on exploiting the brain's most powerful drive. It's hunger for reward, turning men into addicts, pressing levers, waiting for crumbs of satisfaction, while real life passes them by. This is the hidden machinery. This is how the predator works, not by force, but by tricking the brain into trading the hunger for greatness, for the hunger of another hit. And once dependency takes root, it doesn't just steal your time, it steals who you could have been. The modern man believes he is free, he believes he makes his own choices, follows his own desires, and lives by his own will. But history whispers a different story, one that reveals just how easy it has always been to control men, not with chains, but with distractions. In ancient Rome, emperors faced a dangerous reality. The empire was vast, corruption was rampant, and the citizens, especially the restless men, revolt if pushed too far. So the rulers devised a simple, elegant solution: panem et urgences. Feed the people, entertain the people, entertain the people, distract them with games, spectacles, and cheap pleasures, and they will never question their rulers. They will cheer their gladiators while their freedoms are quietly stripped away. This was not accidental, it was strategy. The Romans understood a truth that echoes to this day: a man who is entertained will not revolt, a man distracted will not resist, and a man chasing pleasures will never chase power fast. Forward centuries, the Industrial Revolution reshaped societies, not only through machines, but through culture. Factories demanded obedience, schedules, conformity, but men, if left restless, might rebel. So consumerism rose to the forefront. No longer just survival now, men were told to measure their worth through possessions, through products, through the endless chase of more, just like the Roman circus, but dressed in the clothing of progress. And then came the 20th century, an era when propaganda became a science. During wartime, governments learned how to mold perception, how to steer thought, how to manufacture consent. Media wasn't just about information, it was about control. If you can keep a man focused on enemies, on distractions, on shallow narratives, you never need to face his questions. This thread is clear. Every era finds its own circus, every age discovers its own version of bread. And today we live in the most refined circus ever created, one that doesn't just entertain the masses, but entertains them individually, algorithmically, relentlessly. Rome gave men gladiators, the 20th century gave them television, the 21st has given them infinite feeds, infinite pleasures, infinite distractions. Unlike Rome, which had to build colosseums, or the 20th century, which had to broadcast to millions at once, today's rulers of distraction can target men one by one, giving each exactly what keeps him quiet. docile and pacified, a personalized circus for every man. What makes this system even more effective than the ones before is its invisibility. Roman citizens could at least see the bread, see the circus. They knew they were being entertained, but modern men often do not realize that what feels like freedom of choice is actually the most sophisticated form of control in human history. Think of it this way: in Rome, the emperors gave people games so they would forget politics. Today, men are given endless screens so they forget themselves. They are not chained in dungeons, they are chained in comfort. They are not silenced by force, they are silenced by overstimulation. Just as Rome's distractions weakened the spirit of its men, today's distractions weaken modern masculinity. A society built on instant pleasure does not create warriors, builders, or thinkers. It creates consumers, men who no longer fight for freedom, but fight for faster Wi-Fi, men who no longer dream of legacy, but of likes. History also offers a warning. Rome eventually fell, the bread could not last forever. Circuses could not keep the empire from rotting from within. When distraction becomes the foundation of control, collapse is inevitable, because when men stop striving, when they stop resisting, when they stop hungering for greatness, the structures around them crumble. The parallel is haunting. The Roman man who once stood in awe at the games became no different from the modern man staring at his phone, cheering for strangers he will never meet, consuming victories he never earned. And just as Rome's men wasted away in stadiums, modern men waste away in digital arenas. But here lies the darkest truth: today's distractions are more dangerous because they are infinite. Rome could only host so many games, the industrial age could only sell so many products, but the digital age, it has no limit. The circus never ends, the bread never stops flowing, and so men keep consuming until they forget what it means to hunger at all. This is why history matters, not as nostalgia, not as distant memory, but as mirror. Every generation has been tested with distraction, most have failed, and if men do not awaken now, if they do not learn from the ruins of Rome, the lessons of consumerism, the manipulations of propaganda, they too will fall, not with a bang, not with rebellion, but with silence. Pacified by their own pleasures. History is not a record of kings and empires. It is a record of men and their distractions, and the predator we face today is simply the latest incarnation of an ancient truth. When men are given endless pleasure, they stop seeking meaning, and when they stop seeking meaning, they stop being men at all. What does it mean to be a man? For most of human history, the answer was simple, though not easy. A man was defined by struggle. He hunted not just for himself, but for his family. He built, not only for survival, but for legacy. He protected, endured, and pushed forward against forces that threatened to break him. Masculinity was never comforted, was responsibility. It was the weight a man carried, willingly or unwillingly, that gave him his strength. But look around today, and you will see the slow collapse of this definition. The man of the modern age is not asked to struggle, he is not demanded to sacrifice. Instead, he is encouraged to indulge, to relax, to take it easy. He is praised, not for building, but for consuming. His battles are no longer fought in the real world, but in simulated spaces, digital games, online debates, shallow victories that require no risk, no sweat, no courage. Masculinity, once tied to responsibility, has been replaced with distraction. Philosophers warned us about this. Nietzsche, writing in the 19th century, spoke of the coming of the last man. The last man is not a warrior, not a creator, not a seeker of truth. He is comfortable, he desires nothing greater than safety and pleasure. He avoids pain, avoids challenge, avoids depth. He lives long, but he never truly lives. Nietzsche saw this as the inevitable decay of societies that trade struggle for comfort, and today, his prophecy is unfolding before our eyes. The collapse of masculinity is not sudden, it does not announce itself with fire and blood, it creeps in silently, like rot beneath the surface of wood. First, ambition fades, then, resilience weakens. Finally, the will to strive disappears altogether. Men once trained their bodies and minds for survival. Now they trained their thumbs to scroll men once built civilizations. Now they build profiles. The collapse is not in their muscles, it is in their spirit. Psychology tells us that men thrive when faced with challenge. The archetypes, Carl Jung explored hero, warrior, king were not accidents, they were blueprints of the male psyche, rooted in the necessity of striving toward something greater. A man denied struggle is a man denied growth without challenge. His shadow festers without resistance, his strength decays, and in the modern world, where everything is designed for ease, men are systematically stripped of the very experiences that once made them whole. Considered this. A man can now find validation without achievement. He can find companionship without commitment. He can find stimulation without intimacy. Every reward, once tied to discipline, has been replaced by its hollow counterpart, delivered instantly through screens, and so the instincts that once drove him to conquer mountains now drive him to conquer pixels. The hunger for meaning collapses into the hunger for comfort. This collapse is not just personal, it is civilizational. When men weaken, societies weaken. When men stop striving, innovation stops. When men trade discipline for distraction, the very foundations of culture erode. History's greatest civilizations were built by men who endured hardship, who pushed beyond comfort, who sacrificed themselves for something larger. The modern man, however, is taught that sacrifice is oppression, that discipline is unnecessary, that comfort is the highest good, and so the structures around him weaken, not from attack, but from neglect. Look at the statistics. Rising depression among young men, falling testosterone levels, declining ambition, shrinking resilience. These are not accidents, they are symptoms of the collapse. Men are not broken by external enemies. They are hollowed out by internal surrender. The predator we spoke of earlier does not destroy men violently, it convinces them to destroy themselves, to embrace weakness as freedom, to mistake comfort for happiness. This is why the collapse of masculinity is more dangerous than any external threat. An enemy can be fought, a tyrant can be resisted, but when the collapse comes from within, when men willingly surrender their strength, there is nothing left to fight. The battlefield is abandoned before the war even begins. And yet, there is a cruel irony. Men today live in the safest, most abundant era in history. They have more tools, more opportunities, more freedoms than their ancestors could have imagined, but precisely because of that abundance, they are collapsing without struggle. The masculine spirit withers without challenge. It dissolves into passivity. The very things men once longed for, comfort, ease, abundance, are the very things now destroying them. Kierkegaard called it despair, not the loud despair of tragedy, but the quiet despair of a life without meaning. He wrote that the greatest sickness is to live without realizing you are sick. This is the despair of modern masculinity. Men feel empty, but do not know why. They feel restless, but cannot explain it. They chase distractions, but never feel fulfilled. The sickness spreads silently, while society applauds their compliance. The collapse of masculinity is not a conspiracy, it is a consequence of comfort replacing struggle, a consequence of dopamine replacing discipline, a consequence of ease replacing effort. And as men accept this trade, they lose not just their strength, but their essence. If masculinity was once forged in the fires of responsibility, today it dissolves in the waters of convenience. The hero becomes the spectator, the warrior becomes the consumer, the king becomes the follower, and the world does not notice. Because the collapse does not come with noise, comes with silence. But silence can be more dangerous than war, because when men stop rising to challenges, when they stop seeking meaning, when they stop carrying responsibility, the world itself loses balance. Families weaken, communities falter, societies decay, not because of what men did, but because of what they refused to do. This is the great tragedy of our time. Not that men are destroyed by enemies, but that they willingly surrender to pleasures. Not that masculinity is taken by force, but that it dissolves through neglect. A slow, quiet collapse, one distraction at a time. And if you think this collapse does not matter, look back at history. Every empire that fell, Every civilization that crumbled first saw its men grow weak, not from starvation, not from war, but from comfort. Rome's decline did not begin with invasion, began with bread and circuses, and today, the modern empire of technology and distraction is breeding its own collapse in the same way, by making its men forget who they are, what they carry, and what they were meant to be. We live in a world where freedom is marketed like a product on a shelf everywhere you look. You are told that you are free, free to choose, free to buy, free to speak, free to live the life you want. But if you look closely, you'll realize that much of this freedom is not freedom at all. It is a carefully engineered illusion. Consider the endless cycle of consumption. You are free to choose between thousands of brands, but you are not free from the pressure to consume. You are free to scroll endlessly on social media, but not free from the algorithms that hijack your attention. You are free to chase any career you want, but not free from the silent rules of an economic system that demands your obedience. This is the trap of false freedom, a system that convinces you that every choice is yours, while invisibly guiding you toward the choices that benefit it most. Philosopher Erich Fromm once described it as the fear of freedom. He argued that when people are given superficial freedoms, but stripped of deeper meaning, they cling to whatever authority or distraction gives them comfort. The result is not independence, but dependency. Masked as liberation, history is filled with examples. Ancient Rome offered its citizens bread and circuses, cheap food and grand entertainments to keep them satisfied, while the state quietly consolidated power. In modern times, the circus is digital, the bread is consumer convenience. As long as people feel entertained, distracted, and moderately comfortable, they rarely question whether their so-called freedom is anything more than a sophisticated cage. False freedom thrives on subtlety. No one comes to your door with chains. Instead, the chains are woven into your daily routines. Your paycheck, your mortgage, your smartphone, your craving for validation. You believe you are free because you can pick your Netflix show, because you can like a post, because you can order food at 3 a.m. But real freedom is not measured by options. It is measured by power, and the truth is, most people have none psychologically. False freedom is one of the most destructive forces in a man's life. It convinces him that he is in control, so he never realizes how much of his will has already been surrendered. It keeps him docile, obedient, and distracted. It turns rebellion into hashtags and resistance into aesthetics. The modern man no longer fights against the system because he doesn't even recognize there is one. He believes he is free while living in invisible chains. Think about it. How many of your decisions are truly yours? Did you choose the career you pursued, or were you nudged by economic pressures and social expectations? Did you choose your opinions, or were they shaped by the media you consume? Did you choose your desires, or were they manufactured by advertising and culture? Every time you mistake external influence for personal choice, you sink deeper into the illusion, and the system smiles. Because the best prison is the one where the prisoner believes he is free. But here lies the most sinister part. False freedom doesn't just control men, it destroys them. It erodes ambition by flooding life with endless distractions. It weakens discipline by offering quick comforts at every turn. It kills depth by rewarding superficiality over time. It breeds men who are pacified, dependent, and hollow men who mistake comfort for purpose and convenience for meaning. Real freedom requires sacrifice. It requires the strength to step outside of the cycle, to reject the easy path, to reclaim your mind from the forces that profit off your obedience. But most will never attempt it, because false freedom is seductive. It feels safe, it feels effortless, and so men trade away their potential for the illusion of control, never realizing they were enslaved from the beginning. So, when you hear society tell you that you are free, remember, freedom is not something given to you, it is something you must take back, and until you do, the trap will remain invisible, and the destruction will continue, quietly, slowly hollowing men out from the inside. until nothing remains but obedient shells of what could have been. We live in an age that celebrates constant progress. Every advertisement, every motivational reel, every government slogan tells us the same thing. Humanity is moving forward, technology is advancing, opportunities are everywhere. The future is brighter than ever, but beneath the glossy surface of this narrative lies a disturbing paradox. Progress, the very thing we are told is saving us, may actually be destroying us. Consider the smartphone in your pocket, a marvel of human engineering. A device that connects you to the world in ways unimaginable. Just a generation ago, you can talk to someone across the globe in seconds, access libraries of human knowledge, or create a business empire from your bedroom by all accounts. This is progress, but if you peel back the layers, the picture becomes more sinister. That same device is also a surveillance tool, a dopamine dispenser, a silent parasite feeding on your attention. It doesn't just connect you, it hooks you. It doesn't just liberate you, it enslaves youth. Modern world equates progress with accumulation, more technology, more efficiency, more wealth, more speed. Yet when you look closely at the individuals living within this system, you notice something disturbing. Depression rates are skyrocketing, anxiety is rampant, attention spans are shrinking, and loneliness has reached epidemic levels. The world appears richer, yet the soul feels poorer. If this is progress, then progress is eating us alive. The illusion comes from how we define advancement. We assume that because our tools are more sophisticated, our lives must be better. But history has a way of teaching us that new tools do not necessarily mean new freedom. The Industrial Revolution gave us steam engines, factories, and mass production. It also gave us child labor, polluted cities, and dehumanizing work conditions. The internet gave us instant communication and borderless commerce. It also gave us misinformation, addiction, and the collapse of privacy. With every leap forward, there is an equal and opposite weight pulling us down. The question is, why do we not see this? Why do we blindly accept the narrative of progress when the evidence of its darker side is all around us? Part of the answer lies in human psychology. We are creatures of hope. To believe in progress is to believe that tomorrow will be better than today, and in a world full of uncertainty, that belief is intoxicating. It keeps us moving, working, consuming forever, chasing a future that never quite arrives. The illusion of progress is less about reality and more about control. It keeps the masses docile, distracted, and endlessly occupied. Governments and corporations understand this better than anyone. They craft stories of technological salvation. Politicians promise a future of equality and abundance. Companies sell the dream that the next upgrade, the next gadget, the next platform will finally make your life complete. And so, people line up, year after year, for devices barely different from the last, mistaking newness for improvement. What they fail to realize is that progress is no longer about human flourishing. It is about human consumption. But the most dangerous part of this illusion isn't the lies we're told. It's the lies we tell ourselves. We convince ourselves that being busy is the same as being productive, that owning more is the same as living better, that scrolling endlessly through content is the same as being informed slowly without realizing it. We become prisoners of a system that exploits our instincts for novelty, comfort, and distraction. The illusion of progress isn't just external. Propaganda is an internal hypnosis. This isn't to say that progress is inherently evil. Human history is full of breakthroughs that genuinely improved our lives. Vaccines, electricity, sanitation, literacy. But the danger lies in assuming that progress is automatic, that every new development must be good, that every technological leap must lead us closer to paradise. That assumption blinds us to the costs, and more importantly, blinds us to the deeper question: progress toward what? Toward convenience, toward profit, toward control, or toward a society where the human spirit is free? To break the illusion, one must step back and ask, what does it mean to truly progress? Is it simply having faster machines, or is it becoming deeper, wiser, more resilient human beings. The answer determines whether society moves forward or whether it simply spins in circles, running faster but going nowhere today. Many men find themselves caught in this trap. They are told to work harder, climb higher, earn more, optimize everything. They mistake motion for meaning. They live in constant acceleration, chasing metrics, promotions, and external validation. While their inner lives remain stagnant, the illusion of progress convinces them they are winning. But in reality, they are being drained. Their strength, attention, and purpose are siphoned away in service of systems that do not care if they thrive, that they keep moving. True progress cannot be measured by GDP, by downloads, by the size of one's bank account. True progress is measured in depth of thought, depth of connection, depth of purpose. But these are precisely the things modern society neglects. The world measures men not by their character, but by their output, and so men live under the crushing weight of perpetual insufficiency, forever told they are not enough unless they produce more, achieve more, consume more, consume more. This is why the illusion of progress destroys men faster than even the most obvious vices. Pornography may drain their energy, consumerism may hollow their wallets, but the illusion of progress enslaves their entire identity. It convinces them that they are free when in fact they are shackled. It makes them run willingly toward their own exhaustion, thinking they are sprinting toward victory. And perhaps the cruelest irony is this: the illusion is so convincing that even when men collapse under its weight, society rarely questions the system. Instead, it blames the individual. If you are depressed, you must be weak. If you are broke, you must be lazy. If you are burnt out, you must have mismanaged your time. The machine is never questioned. The narrative of progress is never doubted. The failure is always yours. But perhaps the first step toward real progress is doubt, the courage to look around and ask, is this truly advancement, or is it just a more sophisticated form of slavery? The courage to define success on your own terms, rather than accepting the definitions handed to you, because until men reclaim the right to question progress itself, they will remain trapped in its illusion, forever moving, but never arriving.